Welcome to the Opinionated Benchwarmers Podcast, episode 207. Your opinionated benchwarmers are back to do what we do best, and that's discuss sports. Ramon, how you feeling today, man?
I'm feeling good, man. It's been quite a day. It's been a lot going on, but you know how it is once we get back to what we love to do, which is to talk sports. It just all kind of settles in no matter what the day has been pretty much like. I'm gonna just say on my end all is well. But I'm gonna ask you, man. I'm gonna throw it back to you. How you doing, bro?
Man, I'm doing great, man. Like you said, every time we able to do one of these, it's something that we're passionate about. So whenever we able to get doing this, I'm actually able to snap into it, you know what I'm saying? Get into what we had to discuss and obviously share that passion, man. So I'm feeling great. Man, we got a couple topics to get into though. We got championship weekend just passed us up. And then we have to discuss some questionable coaching decisions in both of these games. And then NBA trade deadline may be a little quiet this go around. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if you're rocking with us, make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast on whatever you like to listen to your podcast at. Make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube. Just search Opinionated Benchwarmers, subscribe, hit the bell, get notified when we drop the content. And yeah, that's how you can rock with us. Any social media, you can follow us on O_Benchwarmers. Ramon, we had a couple good games going on Sunday. You know, the first one we got to get into, probably not much to get into. I'm trying to hype it up,
Yeah.
but the Broncos and the Patriots final score was 10-7, as you can imagine. Nobody would suspect that this game would be this low scoring, but obviously we got to get into a couple things. And it brings up some interesting conversations when you bring up a score of 10-7. Obviously, very low scoring. Patriots defense is respectable. Both of these defenses are respectable. But when you discuss that they were playing in a blizzard, and some football fans enjoy this type of game, I'm not one to join them in it. I can respect it, but it brings up an interesting conversation about these outdoor stadiums, especially in Denver. When you think about the Buffalo Bills and with the snow and everything, it really affects the outcome of the game. And it was ever more evident to me when you see the second game and how great that game was. We'll get into that one, but that's the more of the football that I like to see. It was cold out there with the second game, but still, it wasn't a blizzard out there. So I'm thinking, at first I felt a little jaded because I am a kind of a football purist at times, and I was like, yeah, no domes. Even though I'm a Saints fan and we play in a dome, but I'm like, yeah, no domes. These new stadiums need to be open. But I think I'm starting to try to see the vision and trying to see, hey man, look, if I can get perfect conditions to see great football, I'm gonna take that every time.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's really my thought process as it relates to it because ultimately, what you want to see to me is both the teams at their best. And so, in order to have both teams at their best completely, I think that try to mitigate and not have those weather conditions to be able to impact the game in the way in which it impacted it. Like, you can honestly see that even that game Sunday, like in the second half of it, it changed the scope completely of how the teams operated. It was more so of a self-preservation at a certain point. Obviously, even on key third downs, they not looking to throw the ball. They looking to just run the ball so that they can punt it again. Obviously, also too, it wasn't giving the field goal kickers a real good, solid chance to even make a difference in the game because they were getting what would be considered typical, respectable field goals that they would normally be able to hit that they had no chance because of the way that the wind was or the way that the field was based upon the snow conditions. And to your point, I'm 100% like if you have an opportunity to have a dome, have a dome. You have some of those stadiums where too they have the retractable roof. That way, if you want to have a little bit of that outdoor atmosphere, you can do that. But if you run into situations like Sunday and you know that the conditions are going to be what they're going to be, nah, close that in. Even thinking of the fan experience, and I know that some fans like to brave it and we gonna go shirtless and do all of that. But even from a fan experience standpoint, like if we be real about it, people need to be able to watch a game in a decent level of comfort. So I think that it completely shifted that game, completely changed that game. We don't know what the outcome would have or could have been. I still favor the team who won, obviously, in the Patriots winning that game, but there's a lot of what ifs, and I don't like to live off of what ifs.
Yeah, when you say that, I automatically brought my brain to last year where they had fans getting frostbitten because they were in those extreme weather conditions. And of course, they have a choice and they choose that. That's neither here nor there. But I agree with you completely. I'm with the retractable dome. Even when you look at the Rams, they have a kind of the way that their stadium is designed is it's open and it has a dome over the top. The Commander Stadium, which was released like a month ago now, it's gonna have a translucent roof mirroring what's in Minnesota. So I'm looking towards those options, but I like a good grade of football, and that game was brutal to watch. And as you mentioned that, you look at we're gonna discuss going from Drake Maye and him having 86 passing yards. If you look at the quarterback matchup, 86 passing yards, he did have 56 rushing yards, and he did have a rushing touchdown compared to 133 passing yards and a touchdown of Stidham and an interception he threw as well. If you would have put those stats side by side and you didn't watch this game, you would easily think that the Broncos won this game. But to Drake Maye, just give him all the credit and his flowers. And the way that I'm looking at him now is a little differently than I've been looking at him in the regular season. I get he was in the Super Bowl, he was in MVP conversation, but at this point, the way that he approached this game and the way that he was able to make his reads on the defense and take off and to get 56 rushing yards, which they needed every bit of those yards that he was able to rush for. I'm looking at him in a different conversation. And now that he's in the Super Bowl, I think that we might have to have a different conversation about how we look at him at 23 years old, the second youngest quarterback to be in the Super Bowl. If he wins it at this age, he's on that trajectory. I'm not willing to say that he's going to be on this Tom Brady GOAT. That's getting ahead of myself. But I do think that the first thing he has to do to have a shot at being in that conversation is to win this Super Bowl.
Yeah. To your point, I feel like honestly the Super Bowl will tell you a lot because I'm not here to rain on the parade necessarily.
Snow on the
Yeah,
parade.
snow on the parade. But when we look at the path of heading there, obviously in the Houston Texans game, CJ Stroud was awful on the other side of the field. And so really it wasn't a demanding kind of matchup where it's okay, you got this quarterback on the other end that's dicing it up and we in this big time battle. And then for me, you look at the AFC Championship and we talk about the weather kind of implications. So honestly, for me, I see what you're saying from a totality. I think that Drake Maye is second to me in the MVP voting. I think that the jury is still out a little bit just on the path to get there. We do still understand that not only with the weather conditions, he was also going up against a backup in Stidham, who I think had not played a game since 2023. I want to say that is. So I'm not ready to crown him just yet. I think that what he is doing and being able to, as you said, adapt to the situation, I think that you got to give him credit for that to realize, okay, I'm going to have to use my legs here. It's obviously not going to happen through the air. So I give him credit for that. But this Super Bowl is going to tell me much more because it's going to even level playing field. I think that this will be the best matchup that he's had thus far within these playoffs. And I think that Seahawks defense is really going to show us what do we truly have in Drake Maye. Now, I know that they got diced up a little bit in Matthew Stafford, and we know who Matthew Stafford is. We know who Sean McVay is. We know, and not to cover that game too much, but I think that ultimately, to your point, this Super Bowl will tell us a lot of where I truly have Drake Maye in the hierarchy in the league right now.
Yeah, I'm with that. I agree. I think 100%. If you look at the Super Bowl and the stakes that were high on it, I do think that you have to wait for that. Again, I think considering the circumstances and the weather and what he was facing in a really good defense, I was semi impressed of the decision making and his athleticism. But we got to touch on this. It was a pivotal part in the game, and as you can imagine, if a 10-7 game that Patriots were able to win, obviously there's one tipping point, and there's a tipping point in each of these games that we'll get to. But the tipping point in this one was obviously 4th and 1 with 9.5 minutes left in the second quarter, and Sean Payton decided to go for it while they were down on in the red zone. So they could have had a easy 30-yard field goal, and they opted to go for it, and they didn't get it. More so, that was concerning me. 4th and 1. I know it's not a long one, but you decide to pass it to. I think they passed to R.J. Harvey. My notes, and he didn't catch it. They didn't get it, and you got to think that the game started to turn from there because other than that, you were just watching punts and missed field goals at that point. And imagine if you didn't watch this game, listeners, it was a blizzard, a literally blizzard, not exaggerate. But an interesting call there, and it leads to another interesting conversation about analytics and how these coaches look at the game. But you got to take the points there, in my opinion. It's a playoff game. At that point, you had the momentum because Stidham had the lone best throw of the game. It was that long ball to Marvin Mims. I think it was a 40-yard, 44-yard pass. You got to take the points there, right? Go up 10-0 and fight another day.
Yeah, no, I think that, yeah, no, I agree with you as well. I think that probably in Sean Payton's mind a little bit, he felt that kind of points were going to be at a bit of a premium. And if you can really, lack of a better term, put your foot on their throat, I think that it was his thought process there. But when you do know that ultimately points are going to be at a premium, I think that when you find yourselves in positions where you can put something on the scoreboard, especially considering the fact that you are operating with a backup QB, as I stated, that has not played in a couple of years. Any opportunities that you can capitalize and get something on the scoreboard, I think that you got to ride and rock with that because I don't think that you can be as risky, in my opinion, when you're operating with a backup QB in knowing too in the way in which the conditions were set to get in that game. So obviously, we know that there's sometimes those great risks pay off and sometimes they don't. You're looking at a Sean Payton, who obviously we think back to the Super Bowl when he decided to do an onside kick at the beginning of the second half, and that's
Yeah.
something that people thought was very risky at that moment, and it paid off, and it paid
Yeah.
off in his favor. And I think that he just has that consistent MO that he believes in taking those bona fide risks, and sometimes they pay off big time, and sometimes they don't. And this one came back to bite him, honestly.
So you holding the clipboard and you the head coach of the Denver Broncos. What are you doing in that situation? You're at the fort. You're on the Patriots 14, 4th and 1, 6 minutes left in the half. What you doing?
Yeah, I'm taking the points if I'm to be honest, just
Yeah.
because I don't know if I have the supreme confidence in my offense, and I'm definitely punching this in anyway. So I'm gonna take the points that are available to me at that point because I feel like ultimately too, that continues to inspire my backup QB. I'm getting something out of it. You don't want to waste drives to me at that particular point. So if it's me, I'm not super polarizing on this because I can see the path that Sean Payton took. So for me, I'm not going to personally be too hard on him. But to answer your question, yeah, I'm kicking it there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you go up 10-0. At that point, you have a lot of momentum. You're at home, get the crowd going crazy. Plus, you're putting the pressure on the Patriots. And that's the most important part. And Drake May's 23 years old. I mentioned that earlier. So you seen what the young fella can do on the road. I'm taking the points every time.
Yeah.
Very interesting game. Sean Payton, great job to get the team to that point. Unfortunate injury to his starting QB. We could have saw a battle of the young QBs with Bo Nix and Drake May, but we maybe there's plenty of time for that. Maybe looking at the future of what we've seen in the past with when we look forward to the Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady. Now, I'm not saying that they are those guys, but we're in a new era now. And hey, the verdict's out there. I don't want nobody to kill me online or on YouTube. But moving along, the Seahawks versus Ram, 31-27 game. I was telling Shanae, this game here, like that game was like so good. Like it was just good football all the way around, offensively, defensively, schematically. It was just great to watch. And like we talked about, it was cold as all out there in Seattle, but still the weather conditions really were predicated to good football and the weather conditions were perfect. So I personally enjoyed that game. But it's a couple things to get into, man. We had some future Hall of Famers in this game. When we look back at this game in 2026, we're going to look at it. We had a game with Devontae. We had a game where Smith-Njigba, 10 catches, 153 yards. Puka, 9 catches for 165 yards. I want to start there. Are those number one and number two receivers in the league for you?
I'm not ready to do it just yet. I think that those guys are, for me, they're in tier one at this point. So when I look
Yeah,
at tier one, I think that tier one is still a limited list. I have four guys in that tier one. You can let me know if you have anybody else, but obviously I have the LSU guys and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson.
yeah,
They're in that tier one, and I think that Puka and JSN have elevated themselves into that tier one as well too. I'm not willing to just offer this season alone to just go ahead and say, hey, they're definitively past the LSU guys. We know that Jamar Chase last year, he's coming off a triple crown. And then we understand what happened with Joe Burrow in this year for some
yeah.
injuries and things of that nature that kind of jeopardized that a bit. So I'm not ready to say that they have passed him thus far. And even in Justin Jefferson, we look at the fact that JSN elevated to another level, dare we say, when Sam Darnold came over there. And we know that Jetta still performed well when Sam Darnold was over there at QB. And we know his quarterback situation was just horrible this year. I have them in tier one. I'm not ready to make them number one and number two just yet.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm not gonna add on to that, but I think if Puka is can sustain this, I think Puka is up in there. I think Tuka at this point is three for me. I don't know what he is for you, but I got Chase and I still got Jefferson. Even though Jefferson had a down year, I still have Jefferson and Chase ahead of him just from a skill standpoint. But J- JSN he made me a believer, and I think it gives more evidence. I said it maybe a month of pods ago. Maybe no, this was during fantasy time. I was just saying how much his former office coordinator corrupted his career. And Clint Kubiak left New Orleans, left us, and went up there and has really unlocked him.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold is playing phenomenal, which we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, JSN is in the top tier. I'm not gonna hold you. That was a good development though. But
Yeah, no, 100%. Like you said, I think that it's pretty clear which guys are up there at this point. And I think that it's interchangeable. One thing that I think before we, of course, I know inevitably get to the Matthew Stafford talk, one thing that I'm gonna say as well too, Matthew Stafford has a way of elevating guys as well. If we really look at
that's
it over
true. That's
time and
true.
we look at some of the best single season receiver seasons, three of those guys that we can think about were all paired with Matthew Stafford. We think about what happened with Megatron, and I know that we just believe Megatron to be this freakish athlete and all that, which he was. Not to say neither here nor there, but those seasons came with Matthew Stafford. And then we look at a guy in Cooper Kupp that we don't think to be that freakish athlete. You don't look at Cooper Kupp and say, okay, this guy is going to be somebody that's going to come out here and dominate and has some of the most dominant receivers, some of the most dominant seasons we've ever
Hello,
seen from a
Robert.
receiver. And now at this particular point as well, too, we're also seeing that he's doing the same thing with Puka
Yes.
Nacua. That Puka is ultimately catapulting himself to a completely higher level and stratosphere. So I think that something has to be said about Matthew Stafford. And I think about the other kind of piece of it as well, too, of just for me personally, the little small concern that I have with Puka is not necessarily that I doubt his kind of ability, anything of that nature. You still got to go and make the plays. But once again, like for me, it's something about that Ram system. It's something about Matthew Stafford that kind of elevates guys. So if I'm to go just pure talent, I still have probably, like you mentioned, Puka is probably third on that list. Him and JSN are pretty interchangeable, but the LSU guys are still one and two for me ultimately when I look at what they look like. And I think that ultimately, probably if you polled most GMs and you polled most owners or those who are trying to evaluate who would be their wide receiver one, I think that probably when you look at collectively, I think Jamar Chase still represents that guy that has all of the abilities, all of the tools, whether it's the speed, whether it's the ability to the jump ball, one-on-one contested catches, whether it's the route running. I still think that out of all of that, that Jamar is still probably the guy that's number one and top on that list. And then, like I said, and just repeating once again, I think that not to slight Puka at all, but I do think that kind of that Ram system and Stafford helps to elevate him as well. I would be intrigued to see if he were in another situation, if it would be the same deal.
Yeah, some of the catches Puka make, I'm telling you, in the last couple of games, he showed me something. Maybe the one where he was headed out of bounds, a couple of touchdown passes that he had. I agree with you though. Statistically, in his system, and Matthew Stafford is who he is. He does elevate play. That's why he's a future Hall of Famer. First ballot for me. But when you look at the quarterback matchup in this game, both quarterbacks showed out. Sam Darnold I'm rooting for him. He's an underdog. He was a former third pick in the entire league, went to the Jets, a franchise where players go to die, and he never was counted on. And he's found him a home in Seattle and got offense coordinator and head coach that believes in him. And he went off for 346 yards and 3 touchdowns this game. He didn't make many mistakes. He didn't look rattled like Sam Darnold can when you putting pressure on him. He made all the right throws, all the right decisions. How about that throw, that touchdown pass to Jaxon Smith-Njigba coming around? That the route, the pass, everything was just perfect. And then you had Matthew Stafford with 374 yards and 3 touchdowns. If you would have told me without watching this game again, I like to play that game, and I'm looking at the box score, I would have thought the Rams won this game when Stafford is giving that vintage Hall of Fame performance like he did. But these quarterbacks showed out. It was straight fireworks, and I enjoy watching them play.
No, I agree completely. I think that ultimately it was a big time duel. You can't look at to me either guy and say that there's anything that either one of them would have done to have cost the team the game. I think that they both put their teams on their back. I think that they were both very accurate throughout the game. They were both pushing it down the field at times. This wasn't just like safe QB play either. It wasn't just let me dink and dump the entire time. Like they were literally out there making plays. I think you saw their ratings, their QBRs be almost identical, very similar. And it came down to, which I know we'll get to, just little small differences throughout the course of the game. If it's my thought process, I do feel that although the Rams kind of figured out a way eventually to bottle him up a little bit, I still think that Kenneth Walker was a little bit more impactful than what the Rams had in the run game. I know that they had things split between Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, but I think that Kenneth Walker was just a little bit more effective, especially. I'm not sure the exact numbers if I probably go and look at it, but I know he had a couple of big receptions, actually 4 receptions for 49 yards that played into it as well too. As you mentioned, man, it was just an outstanding game. It was one of those games that you felt like sitting back. Maybe somebody's just gonna make a drive at the end of this and it's just gonna win this. It felt like that type of game, one of those epic kind of games, and it was two teams, two division rivals that just left it all out there on the field and definitely gave us something as fans that we were able to actually appreciate after watching that game earlier in the day. We needed
Yeah.
something, a better nightcap, and they gave it to us completely.
Look, the nightcap made me a believer in these translucent roofs and these retractable roofs. I'm all for it, Ramon. I'm an inside football guy now. And it's crazy for me to say I'm an avid Saints fan. If you've been listening to us, I'm a Saints fan. We play in a dome. However, just how amazing this game was. Just hey, NFL, any new stadium that's built, it needs to have an option to create good weather situations to have good football. But I want to touch on this here. In looking at Devontae Adams and how he looked in the press conference, obviously he was disappointed. You got to feel bad for him, as well as Matthew Stafford, which it looks like he'll be back for another round. At this point in his career, you're looking at it year by year and seeing how his body feel at his age. But at 37 years old, like he's going to give it another round. But I really wanted to see Tay get it. And I think that I don't know if it's how defenses are playing him, but they have to find a way to get him more involved. He was more involved in this game than he was in the previous game that they had. But I just think Tate should have had more opportunities in his playoffs.
Yeah, I think that it's tough though, man. When you do have a lot of things centered around Puka and he has become that true number one, when you really look at it a lot of times within the McVay offense that we've even seen at times, when they have a key guy, that guy gets a ton of targets, everybody else just eats around it. And so ultimately for me, I think that he got a decent fair shake. I think that we are seeing Devontae age a bit more at this point. Not to say that he's over the hill whatsoever. This was an outstanding still season for him, and he still showed a lot that he has in the tank. But we have been seeing over the last couple of years that there had been a little bit of a regression there, a little bit of a negative regression there. And for me, I can see what you're saying, but personally, I don't feel that he got overlooked too much. I just think that ultimately within this game and within this matchup, the Rams kind of went to what they typically go to. They're gonna give Puka, he's going to get 10 plus targets within the game, and then it's going to get spread out to the other guys, and you're going to have a little bit of the passing and the running game as well, too. And for me, I think that ultimately it just came down to that. Now, was it tough to see, especially the way in which it was for him afterwards? It really put everything into perspective of how much these guys put into it, how much this really means to these guys, especially in knowing in general of being a competitor, but seeing how really was speechless in that post game interview. You could tell that he really put a lot of this on his shoulders, but at the end of the day, it's the best effort that could have been put out there.
If you believe that the NFL is a script, we have the rematch of the Patriots and the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. If you don't know what I mean, the infamous Malcolm Butler interception when the Seahawks were at the one and should have gave it to beast mode, but decided to throw a pass, and Russell Wilson threw that infamous pick to Malcolm Butler and he took it home for a touchdown, game-winning touchdown for the Patriots to win the game. So you got to think that the Patriots are looking for a little revenge as the fans and as the players
Or the
who will be
Seahawks.
motivated by that. Yeah, I'm sorry. For the Seahawks, will be looking for some revenge against the Patriots, but we'll see what happens. We'll get into that more next week when we do some Super Bowl prep. We got 2 weeks before that game, so we didn't want to give it all today. Ramon, I'm here to talk about a little bit of NBA, my personal favorite sport. I know this is a sport that you hold near and dear to your heart. We'll start off with our Los Angeles Lakers. If you're just starting off listening to us, all three of us are Lakers fans, and that's what kind of brought us together. So we got to start there before we get into some Dre deadline talk. But we got the Lakers here. They're coming off a big win in Chicago. Probably one of our more impressive wins. It was off of stellar performance of Luka Doncic, who scored 33 points, almost a triple double. Had what he had eight assists and 7 rebounds, something like that. Yep, he had
Yeah.
7 rebounds and 12 assists. We won 129 to 118. At this point, the Lakers are sitting fifth in the West with 28 and 17, just a couple games back behind San Antonio and Houston. Are you impressed with the Lakers right now? Are we peaking at the right time? We're 5-5 in the last 10 games. The last 2 wins have been impressive just because they've been on the road, but Chicago is Chicago. They are a stellar offensive team, and we was able to have a decent defensive performance. But how you feeling about the Lakers with the trade deadline coming up?
I'm gonna be real about it. I'm not overly impressed with the Lakers at this point. I think that we've had a solid season, and so I'm not here to act like everything is all lost. You sit at 28 and 17 at this particular point, so 11 games over 500. I think that you weathered the storm of Austin Reeves being out for an extended period of time, which I think is huge. Austin Reeves was your second best player at the beginning of this season, up in the air whether somebody still feels where he's number two option or number three, whatever you want to say, big time impact. And so I think that has really hurt the Lakers at this point. But I think that this is also a team that has to get active at the deadline. I don't think the Lakers is currently constructed. I don't think that they are necessarily good enough to get it done at this particular point. I think you, as we talked about previously, still need to get a little bit more athleticism on the wing. Guys that really can do it on both sides as well too, because of course we would want guys from that defensive standpoint, but a guy like Bando doesn't present enough offensively for you. We've seen a little bit of up and down with Marcus Smart as well too. And so I think that you need some athleticism on that wing that can also still shoot the basketball as well too. To answer your question of how I'm feeling with the Lakers, I don't necessarily feel that we are peaking. I think that we've still been a little bit inconsistent to me lately, even though we've had 2 wins lately. But I think it is a team that's going to need some moves at the deadline. And ultimately, when you get Austin Reeves back and get him operating how he was, hopefully before the injury, that'll be huge for the team.
We got the Cavaliers tomorrow night as we record this the day before. I think that Rui, if we can get some more consistency from Rui and how he's been playing, I think what he had 17 points this past. I think he had
He had
20, right?
23. He had
He had
23. He came
23
in, got
points.
kind of hot off the bench.
Yeah, if he can shoot the ball like he's been shooting, Vandy has been hitting, knocking down a couple shots, and I think that's where we see our best success. But like you said, it's not consistent and it's not sustainable. And defensively, we are atrocious. But as we get into what I mentioned earlier, a quiet NBA trade deadline. The NBA trade deadline is what, on the 5th, February 5th. And it doesn't appear that any big moves have happened yet up at this point that we're used to. Now, when you look at Anthony Davis is hurt, the Giannis got hurt, John Moran is injured. When you look at all these guys, these were all the pieces that were all in trade rumors throughout the entire season. But a lot of these guys will stay put because I don't know many teams that's willing to take a chance on any of these players. Anthony Davis just can't stay healthy. He's proven that. So you got to just deal with that. And it gets worse when he doesn't want to be there. I don't think he wants to be in Dallas. I do think he wants to be in Dallas to get another contract and sustain himself. But as far as wanting to be there to compete, I don't think that he wants to do that. Plus, just knowing that he was a former Laker, I don't feel like he has that mentality to go to a bad situation and be the one to make it better. He's just a guy that likes that. He's more of a complimentary piece, but he's not the guy.
Yeah.
And then you look at John Morant with all the issues that he's had historically with his discipline over the years. He can't stay healthy. And then getting into it with teammates and everything. So he was a risk as is, but when you put in the injuries, it's just another problem. So I don't think see any of these guys getting moved before the trade deadline unless they going for cheap.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. It already to me probably was going to be a dull NBA trade deadline, but when you pack the injuries on top of that, it just completely compresses the market and it doesn't make it interesting whatsoever. So honestly, I'm not even too hyped for the NBA trade deadline.
The
Like we're gonna
NFL trade
see,
deadline's been better, man. What is the
yeah,
NFL doing to the NBA? Now
they
they took
taking
our
all the
free
NBA
agency.
juice.
They
Yeah.
taking our NBA trade deadline, man. They took Christmas away from us. Like it's getting crazy. Yeah, Ramon, when you look at those list of players, I don't see them going anywhere, man. I don't think that there's any value in them unless there's a team that's willing to take a chance or to overpay. But yes, all we left with is a Trey Young trade. That's the biggest trade.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, so when you look at the scope of things and the teams in the NBA that you think could use a trade, what would you be willing to do? Or what team you think could make a small move to maybe think that they could add on to get them over the hump, if you will?
Man, it's tough when you think about it because you probably got to think of what teams are in that contention space. One thing that has been floated that I don't know, you tell me whether this makes sense to you or not, but I saw that the Knicks have been looking into Drew Holiday and expressed some interest with Drew Holiday to try to potentially get them over a hump, add a little bit of defensive presence in that backcourt and try to hope that a guy who has gotten it done, obviously with a team that we won't name at this particular point, but a guy who has gotten over the hill and gotten it accomplished. I heard that they might be eyeing him a bit, but wanted to see what would your thoughts be on that? Like, how do you think that Drew would fit out there in New York?
I would like it. I think when you got a Jalen Brunson who's offensively gifted and he's going to be who you surround your offense with, and defensively you have somebody next to him that could bail him out. I do see the fit, and Drew offensively is pretty good as well. So I would let's like to trade, and that led me to my other point. I think that for some reason on this, I only could think of players that teams need to trade. I think the Knicks would need to trade Cat. I think if I was Cat, I'd be begging for a trade. I don't think that they're utilizing him. I don't think that his offense, that the offense that they're running, it really caters to what he's good at. Like a lot of people are quick to criticize him, but this was a guy that was averaging over 20 points and close to 10 rebounds last season at certain points in 10 or 15 game spurts when the offense was going to him. So I don't think he's being used that way right now in the Knicks, but you would have to think that he would be involved in that deal. So I do agree with it. If I was able to trade away Cat and get Drew, I think I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, yeah. And probably some other, I still think you need some other kind of piece. We know that Drew is getting a little bit up there in age. So I think that if you do a deal like that, and this is not me thinking right now, I have to go and dissect what the money looks like and all that. I haven't had an opportunity to necessarily do that, but I think you want to grab another piece within the midst of that. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that works. We'll see how that floats and if that ends up landing or making kind of any sense. Do you think that in talking about it, whether we talk about defined guys right now or just pretty much teams that you think needs to make a move. If you were to say a team in each conference, let's do it in that way. If you were to say a team in each conference that you feel that, hey, they need to make a move to really get over the hump, whether it's to really cement themselves as a true contender or whatever that sort, like, who would you say on both sides of things right now?
We could both do the Lakers. I think that West Coast locked up. We gonna anytime I got an opportunity to talk about the Lakers, I'm gonna do it. But I think we are missing an athletic wing. So if some kind of way in my magical world, like you, I hadn't looked at the money, I hadn't looked at the assets and what would make sense. But Trey Murphy, man, if we was to get Trey Murphy in some type of deal, if we got to give up Austin Reeves and give up 25 points per game, so be it. But you got a Trey Murphy who can get his own shot. He can spot up and shoot, and he can defend multiple positions. I think that's what we need. I think we have that somewhat of a version in that in Vandy, but Vandy doesn't have anything offensively,
Yeah.
and then Rui is inconsistent. So I would love for that to happen. I know it's not going to happen, but that's the type of caliber of player that we need. And
Nah,
he's
100%.
oh, you be doing back to back. You had something to add on that.
No, I'm good with that. I completely agree with that assessment. He would be a perfect fit with us. I think that probably if you nail it down to another team in the Western Conference as well, I'd probably say the Houston Rockets. I think that they're a team that came in with big time aspirations, really felt that bringing in KD was going to get them over the top. And then we know ultimately what happened from an injury standpoint with Fred VanVleet that really shook up the team and took a little bit of that veteran presence that they were expected to have. And so I think that bringing in maybe a little bit more of a veteran presence, bringing in somebody maybe in that backcourt to continue to help out Amen Thompson and what he has, I think would be something that would be beneficial to the Rockets. If I'm going to take off my Lakers glasses for a bit or my Lakers hat for a bit and look at the league at another team that needs to make a move, to me, it would be the Rockets to try to put themselves back into that OKC or San Antonio space.
Yeah, I'm with that. I'm with that. Yeah, looking at the East Coast, and when you look at the teams that's up at the top, the Raptors are sitting third in the East. That's not saying much, but they're playing good ball. The Celtics are sitting second. If I'm the Celtics, I'm not expecting to be second with Jason Tatum going down with injury. If anything, I thought it was going to be a year where they try to tank and get a high draft pick, sit Tatum out for the rest of the year, and bring him back, but they look primed and they're coached very well. They have a lot of solid pieces. They can make a move to elevate them into contention. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that something like that is interesting because one thing I feel for the Celtics, and I think it's a little bit scary. I think that if they make certain moves, I think you're gonna see Tatum try to rush himself back, which I don't think is the best thing ultimately for him from a long-term
No.
standpoint. So I think that it would be a little bit scared to push it a little bit, but no one would think that at this point, like you said, that they would be sitting second in the East. Like what Jaylen Brown has done this season, I think has been outstanding to have those guys where they've been positioned. I'm trying to think off the top of my head what would be that move that would really get them over the top, though.
I think if you could look at bringing in another shooter, you
Mm,
always can use shooters, a starting caliber shooter. I don't know, I can't think of a name of a player right now that'll fit that mold, but I think probably some more offense. I think defensively they solid,
yeah,
but yeah, that's what I think. I think more defense, more shooting for them.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like we said, it's a quiet trade deadline. I think that apron with the cap is really, it has killed free agency. It has killed trades because financially these trades have to make sense. And a lot of times teams can't make it make sense on paper. That's why these deals aren't happening. And then unfortunately you have a lot of injuries with players that I think, but prior to Giannis getting hurt, I thought that he would have been on a different team come this trade deadline. And we said a couple podcasts ago, you're open to Giannis coming to the Lakers. What would that deal look like to you on with Giannis getting to the Lakers? What would you have to give up?
And I think obviously you have to give up Austin Reeves. He has to be the centerpiece of that deal. So I think that he's a guy that you would have to give up. I think that you're gonna have to give up some type of wing slash some type of forward presence. So I think a guy like Rui would have to be thrown in there. They're probably gonna want some type of expiring deal. So when you think of your expiring deals or contracts that's on the books, you think of Maxi Kleber that has a contract that's expiring. You think of also, I think Gabe Vincent has an expiring contract. So I think that it would be a combination of Austin Reeves as your centerpiece. You're probably going to have to still throw in another player that they think is relatively attractive that's a role player, an expiring deal, maybe two expiring deals, but probably you might be able to get away with one, and then you're gonna have to throw in at least one first, if not two firsts, to make a deal like that ultimately work. And I think that's a relatively rich package in what the trade market has looked like recently. Now, we're not too far removed where guys like Mikal Bridges were going for 5 first-round picks. But as you talked about, the CBA has ultimately changed a lot. I think that might be a whole pod in itself that we were just talking about the NFL getting the NBA's juice. But at the end of the day, has the CBA created some of these things that has caused the NBA to lose a little bit of its juice? But that's a whole nother pod in itself. But to get back to your question once again, Austin Reeves has to be the centerpiece. You probably throw an expiring deal in there like Maxi Kleber or Gabe Vincent, maybe an attractive, decent little role player, and probably two picks.
Yeah, I think Dalton Connect will go in that going at of a young player that's attractive. But yeah, NBA got to figure it out, man. It's not as exciting. No, and a lot of injuries happen. I think some of these guys we mentioned that were injured probably would have been moved by the deadline, but we'll see. We're not here to play Monday quarterback. But man, thank you for rocking with us again, man. Opinionated Bench Warmers. Make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast on YouTube or wherever you like to listen to your podcast at. We also can find us on social media, _benchwarmers. And then until next time, we are out of here.
Later.